And we are live. Welcome, mystery and thriller fans. I'm your on-air host, Sara DiVello, and I am so excited to host New York Times best-selling author Miranda Beverly-Whittemore, whose brand new book, Fierce Little Thing, is out today and already earning incredible reviews and praise. What an honor to host her. Miranda, welcome to Mystery and Thriller Mavens. Tell us about Fierce Little Thing.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so thrilled to be here on publication day. Fierce Little Thing is my fifth novel. It's about a group of friends who grow up on a commune in rural Maine in the early 90s as children. And as that commune becomes more and more like a cult and more radicalized, those children are driven to do something pretty terrible together in a last-ditch attempt to save the commune. And they get away with it, and it doesn't work. So then, about 25 years later, those young people are now in their middle age, and they start getting, in their various lives, they're very scattered to the wind, and they start getting letters, the same set of letters, blackmailing them to come back to the original land where they live together and face what they have done. So they have to decide. The story is told back and forth in two different time periods. You meet them as children and you also meet them as adults. And the structural kind of scaffolding of the story is these two questions, which is, what did they do? And then what will they do? And so you don't know until the end the answer to either of those questions.
Ooh. Oh, well, you hooked us good, Miranda, and I can't wait to get into every single detail of it. But first, I just want to welcome all of our mystery and thriller loving friends who are watching on Facebook, who are watching on YouTube, who are watching on all of our channels. Welcome, book loving friends. You're in the right place. If you've been here before, you know how this works. And if you're new, welcome. We're so happy to have you. Here's how it works. Every week, I handpick my featured authors and give them to you. This is your time to ask them anything. So you can ask Miranda about Fierce Little Thing. You can ask her about her writing process. You can ask her about communes. I know I'm intrigued. Ask her anything. You know how it is. What happens on Mystery and Thriller Mavens stays on Mystery and Thriller Mavens. It's the Vegas of books. So get the questions going in the comments. Gayle is saying, hi, Sara and Miranda, happy pub day. Gayle, top community member there. Great to have you with us as always. Now, I know I have some questions. So I'll kick it off while you guys start thinking of your questions and getting them going in the comments. Thanks for the hearts, you guys. So Miranda, I want to ask you, why Maine? Why a commune? Tell us about this, the backstory here.
Well, so I grew up in proximity to communes. I myself didn't grow up on a commune, but I'm married to somebody who was raised on a lesbian political commune on the Upper West Side, actually. And then I also am close to a number of other people who grew up on different kinds of communes around the world. And so I've always been very interested in that experience of communal living. The setting of Maine is actually, it's set in a place where my husband's family has lived since the 60s. So his mother lives there now in a cabin right on the lake where this book is set. I really have to know a place well to write about it. So I always kind of knew I would write a book there. And then I got really interested in the landscape of this place, which is very much in the book. The book is steeped in the flora and the fauna, because these people who have moved to this place are part of a back to the land movement. They have this idea that the way to save humanity, the way to save themselves, is to live off the grid, to forage for themselves, to plant and eat the food that they grow to various degrees of effectiveness. And something that really was amazing about writing this book is I started writing this book years ago and they sold it right before COVID hit, when I was living with my family of four in a Brooklyn apartment where we'd lived for 20 years. And then when COVID hit, my family of four actually left Brooklyn pretty quickly and moved into a beach house with a friend of mine who's a single mom who has a little kid who had to work full time, and she couldn't do it in her Brooklyn apartment. So suddenly I had to finish this book. I was under deadline and I was living communally, which was like amazing to find myself living in this way that the book was about. Also, a fun detail is that there's a lot of cooking of sourdough in this book. And I had done that for a number of years before the pandemic made that cool. And I was suddenly feeding my family on sourdough because we couldn't get yeast, and we had a hard time getting basics. We had a hard time getting bread. So I was suddenly cooking sourdough for my family every day, which was what my characters were doing in their book. And it was so weird.
Oh my gosh, that is so weird. Oh my gosh, I am loving the behind the scenes details of this fam. Am I right? I mean, we are here for the behind the scenes details. I always say I love to get every author to share at least one never before revealed secrets. That's what we're here for. So this is so cool to hear about this. Leslie is saying hello from Canada. Leslie, welcome. Great to have you. Top community member there. Always great to have you. Annissa is saying happy pub day from South Carolina. Annissa,
thank you.
Member. Great to have you here, lady. Let me just see. I'm making sure I don't miss anything. Annissa saying hello, Sarah and Miranda. Annissa, great to see you. Thanks for coming. Hello to you. So about this sourdough, Anissa's giving us all the hearts. Annissa, thank you. Gayle is saying, and foraging in the garden brings back early COVID days. So Miranda, are you a gardener? Are you still a sourdough baker? Tell us.
It's interesting that you would ask that because, my family had lived in a New York City apartment for 20 years with no outdoor space. And now we live in Vermont. And we actually have a beautiful south-facing front yard with light all day long, and so we have a garden now. We've been growing all sorts of delicious foods. We have the joke around here, which everyone tells, is like, don't leave your door unlocked in Vermont in July because someone's gonna put a zucchini on your front seat. And there's a lot.
I love zucchini. I'll take it. Anyone who wants to give me a zucchini, I'll bake it zucchini bread. I'll saute it with a little olive oil, a little garlic,
delicious.
A few herbs. I garden as well. I have a little urban garden here in the city, and I love growing my own food. There's something so deeply rewarding about it.
Absolutely.
It's so cool. Miranda, I'm going to need to know more about this commune that your spouse grew up on the Upper West Side of New York City. I did not know there were communes in New York City. What are you talking about? Tell us.
I mean, I think there are communes everywhere because everywhere there are people who live outside of the bounds of the strictures of what we think of as kind of normal. So my husband was raised by a group of women who were politically minded. They were working on Black liberation and doing really amazing work back in the 70s. And so he was raised in this amazing commune of women. He was the only male in that there were two other children, but they were both girls. So he has a very unique perspective. And I will say that it has made him a really amazing husband.
I was going to say, I bet that's a guy who does the dishes unprompted. I bet that's a guy who really respects and loves and appreciates women. I bet that's a guy who gets up and clears the table and offers to make dinner. I bet he's an awesome guy.
This is true. This is true of my husband. He is very much that way. Yeah. So,
yay. I love that. I love that. Now, Miranda, how long did it take you to write this book, start to finish, soup to nuts, cradle to the grave? Give us the skinny. Well,
it started out, I started writing it, I'm not even going to be able to know. Maybe like 5 years ago, I started really thinking about it. And I took a few stabs at it. The book is told from the point of view of one person, Saskia, who is more complicated than she might seem. And I'm so grateful to the wisdom of other writers who share work with me. One of them, my wonderful friend, Emily Rabbito, who's a wonderful writer in her own right, basically read an early draft of, I think it was maybe 100 pages of the first stab at this book. And she said, and it was told from multiple points of view. And she basically said, you know what? I really think this is Saskia's story. And I think you need to start over and write from her point of view. And once I did that, it changed everything. And suddenly I knew what the book needed to be, and I knew the trajectory of her journey being the kind of the propulsive energy, both in the past section and in the present section. When you know her as a 12-year-old, and then when you know her again in her 20s, in her 40s. And I really loved the idea of this group of friends around her. One of my favorite things in life is when you run back into someone you haven't seen. So maybe somebody, if you go to a reunion, or if you run into someone in a bookstore you haven't seen in 20 years. And there's something so fabulously strange about the ways in which people are completely themselves for their whole lives. And I really wanted to write about that feeling. I wanted these characters to feel familiar to the reader. I wanted people to say, oh, I know she's going to say that because I know her and I know she would say that, right? But also the ways in which people change, of course, and the assumptions we make about people being predictable, and then the ways in which they surprise us. That also felt like a very exciting trajectory to focus on, to think about these different people. So
I love that. I love that. Now, in terms of writing event, and fascinating to know that you started this out as more of a multi POV, and then your trusted friend and fellow writer said, "This is Saskia's book," and you leaned into that.
yeah.
Very cool. Gayle is saying, so many people have moved out of cities into more rural areas during the pandemic. How has this new environment impacted your writing? Ooh, Gayle, great question. Miranda, tell us.
That's a great question. Well, I finished this book as I was here in the North. So one of the really important parts of this book is Saskia's, she's a city girl too, who moves to the country. Her understanding and increased interest in the outside world, right? When she first comes to Home, which is the name of the commune, she's mystified and tantalized by the unknowability of that outside world. She doesn't know the names of any of the plants or any of the trees, but she feels that there's this presence all around her. And there's an older woman who lives adjacent to the commune, whose name is Marta, who is an expert forager and ends up taking her under her wing and giving her the names for those places, in many times the Latinate names. So for me, that journey was very similar. I did a lot of research on what birds and animals and trees and insects and tiny little plants, what those would be called, why, when they come up, when they grow. And I certainly did a lot of observing of my world. I'm in Vermont, but it's not a terribly different from Maine in some ways, to kind of just get a sense of what that environment, the impact of that on your life.
Ooh, very cool to hear about the research down to right into the insects, the flora and the fauna. As you, a city girl, moved herself out to the country. Very cool to see that echoed on the page. Welcome, Connie. Thanks for joining us. So a question coming in from Annissa. She would like to know, does the title Fierce Little Thing have more than one meaning? Give us the skinny on the title. Give us the story of the title, the tale of the title.
Well, so one of the things that the people who live on this commune do to keep themselves motivated, which is an ancient practice, is they sing. They sing a lot. And I grew up going to a summer camp where we learned a lot of old folk songs, which were really fun to learn. And there's a very quirky song called A Horse Named Bill, which first appeared in the American Songbook in the early 1920s. And it's kind of a nonsense song. It doesn't really make sense in a great way. And it was really fun as a kid to sing that song, but it also has this kind of part of it that's very scary. So some of the lines are, let's see, I'm trying to figure out where to start you. Now in Frisco Bay, there lives a whale. She eats pork chops by the bale, by the hogshead, by the schooner, by the hat box, and the pillbox. Her name is Lena, and she's a peach. But don't leave food within her reach, or babies, or nursemaids, or chocolate ice cream sodas. She loves to laugh, and when she smiles, you just see teeth for miles and miles, and tonsils, and spare ribs, and things too fierce to mention. So that last line, "Things Too Fierce to Mention," was a working title for this book, because something that the group of people who are living at this place, they practice this idea called unthinging, which is really removing all possessions from your life as an ecological choice, and also as a spiritual choice. To be unfeigned is this high idea within the group. So I really wanted the word feigned to be in the title. It became clear to me pretty early on that my publisher wasn't going to love the title Things Too Fierce to Mention. It was too long and too disjointed in some ways. So I thought a lot about different ways to think about the word fierce and the word thing. Those two words felt very important to me because Saskia is incredibly fierce. And then I thought, I have a little girl who is incredibly smart and brave, and she, I've noticed since having her that the world loves to put labels on especially girl children. And so the idea of someone being like a cute little thing or a fierce little thing or a tender little thing, those are diminutives we use on children. And so I loved the idea of that name being a name. And it's actually something that comes at the very end of the book. Someone calls Saskia this name. They call her a fierce little thing. So it really fit. But also the book is about unthinging, and also these people do something really terrible together, which is like a fierce little thing. So there are many meanings to the title. I love the title, and I loved how my publisher ended up, you can see it behind me, ended up making the cover. I just loved those words right across it. It just felt so right to me. And they almost look like teeth, which just feels like the right feeling for the book.
And I'm holding it up really close so everyone can see it. This is a really beautiful cover. And as you can see, there's a home in there in between the teeth of the letters. So this is really cool. Thank you for the great question, Annissa. And I love hearing the story behind the title and how people get to the titles. Did it come in a flash of genius? Is it number 101? Like, how did you get to this title? And also, how did you get to this cover? Oh, welcome, Deb. Welcome, George. Good to have you here. How did you get to this title? Was this, this cover, was this the first cover? Did you get any input into it? Did you have a few iterations? Give us the story of the cover.
It actually was the first cover. So my New York Times bestseller, Bittersweet, has kind of a similar, I don't have it here. It's over there. I won't be able to get it, but has a kind of a similar concept. It's a lakeside property. There's a house in the middle. It's golden, though. It's very, because that book is all about someone aspiring to be a part of a place where they don't yet belong. So it feels like this tantalizing, like you're just like, oh, I want to go there. I want to be in the sunlight. And this book, Fierce Little Thing, is very much akin to Bittersweet. So my publisher really wanted to create a book that had was in conversation, a cover that was in conversation with that. And then they showed it to me, and I just loved it. I will say I'm kind of a stickler about covers, and I don't always love the first cover I'm given. And I try to play nice and be really, really understanding of the fact that at a certain point, a publisher knows better than the writer about what they want, what will sell. And so I try to pick my battles on that, but it was not a problem with this cover. I loved it. And the only criticism I offered was that the house that they used, that is this house, it looked way too brand new and pretty, and commune is like a rundown, mossy. And so I said to my editor, do you think the designer would be willing to like slap some more dirt on there? But one thing I love about the, here, let's see, I can grab it. One thing I love about the main page, the title page, you'll see is there's this wonderful little, can you see? It's a mushroom.
Mushrooms. Yes, these beautiful mushrooms.
And I just love them there. And
yay.
The book is all about foraging and about and the mushrooms have a meaning too in the story. So I loved that little hint. I felt like that gave it that kind of like really earthy tone the book needs, because these are not people who are bathing very often. Right. It's not a pristine environment by any shape of the imagination.
Exactly, exactly. And I love those little, I think they call them Easter eggs, and when they plant little nods to the content of the book and you're like, I know what that means. And you sort of
Definitely.
you get to find it. It's so fun as a reader. Am I right, you guys, a fam, all of our readers? Isn't that the best thing when you find a little and you're like, I gotcha.
I
I
know
see
what that
you.
is. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. Welcome, Nancy. Welcome, Gayle. Two Gayles today. Great to have you. Miranda, let's talk about some of the incredible praise that this book has gotten. The Million said this is a secret history-esque tale. All the ingredients for the perfect summer read. That must have been, and that is but one of the amazing reviews that you have gotten. Do you have a favorite review that you've gotten, a favorite bit of praise?
I mean, that was really exciting.
Yeah.
USA Today over the weekend called it gripping. So that was really lovely.
We love gripping.
Yeah, it's drawing some. I mean, I think there are now 3 reviews that have compared it to the work of Donna Tartt, which means so much to me because I love her work so much. And that's really exciting. And then a review that hasn't yet come out, but I will give you a spoiler, has said that they also compared to the work of Shirley Jackson, which is amazing to me too, because I love
gosh. And now you're in Vermont. It's so perfect.
I know it is.
You went to the land of Shirley Jackson and she started
and here
to,
she is. There you go.
Yeah, you invited her in and she just dove right in. What an incredible compliment. Wow.
Yeah.
Karen King Matlock is saying yes to the Easter eggs. Karen, amen. This is my new friend Karen. We just met yesterday in a Facebook group. And she said, covers tend to draw me into a book first. And this one is great. Looking forward to getting my hands on this book. Karen, right?
Thank you.
I'll say it. I will judge a book by its cover. And I love the art of it. I love the artistry of it. And this is such a beautiful one. I totally agree. Thank you. Gayle would like to know, Miranda, how did you become a published author? Give us the story of your path to publication.
So this is actually my 5th novel. I'm 45, and my first book came out in my 20s. I wrote a book in college as my senior thesis, which has never been published. But it's definitely where I got the taste, where I realized this was something that I wanted to do with my life. And then right after I graduated from Vassar, which is where I went to college, I got a job working at the Poetry Center at the 92nd Street Y in New York City, helping run the reading series there. And it's if you ever find yourself in New York, it's a great place to go on a Monday night because they have incredible writers come and talk every night on their stage. And in the time that I worked there, I worked with Philip Roth and Toni Morrison and Jose Saramago and Seamus Heaney and really amazing writers. And in that time, essentially I was in my early 20s. I was getting everyone coffee and making sure they had their raincoats and making sure that they knew where the green room was. But it occurred to me as I watched all of these luminaries come in and out of the door that this was a job that I could actually have, that I didn't have to just get them things. I could actually do this job too. So in the evenings and on the weekends, I wrote a book, which ended up becoming my first novel, The Effects of Light, which is about a pair of sisters who are photographed by a friend of their family to really challenging results as later on down the line. And that book ended up selling in a 2-book deal to Warner Books, which doesn't exist anymore. But that's how long I've been in publishing. Some publishers don't exist anymore.
Cool.
And so and then my second novel was published. And then Bittersweet was my 3rd book, which came out in my 30s. And then my most recent novel, June, came out 5 years ago. So here I am now with Fierce Little Thing.
Very cool. Gayle, thanks for the great question. We're always curious to hear about how people get to be authors. And Miranda, thank you for that. And I just want to say, I think your hair is rubbing on the mic a tiny bit and giving us a little bit of interference. That's hashtag long hair girl problems or long hair people problems. Yes. And I have had that problem myself. So yeah, I think it's just because the sound is so great on here that's perfect. Thank you so much.
Great.
So yes, let me just make sure I'm not missing any questions. Okay. So, you have, why this book? Why now? What compelled you to write this right now?
So on the surface, I think this book is a really fun thriller. The truth is that the book is about a lot of things that we're dealing with right now in our country. It's about white toxic masculinity. It's about men in charge, basically getting white women to do their bidding. And that was something that we saw a lot of in the last election that was really terrifying to see. And that structure works within the structure of this book. I mean, I think Saskia finds herself being engaged in these toxic practices of privilege without even knowing that that's what she's doing. And I think the story becomes, in her adulthood, her realization that she can never fix that, but she can try to redeem a little bit of it by doing the right thing. And I also was I spent the last many years of my life, especially being a mother of a daughter, feeling so angry at how women are treated. And I wanted to write the kind of the ultimate revenge story, a story of vengeance in which a woman who has been forced to act in a way that is really problematic figures out how to fight back against that model. So there was something really fun about writing that part of the story, writing her choice to kind of like come into her own and to become like an axe, that's the head of the cult. This man named Abraham at one point tells her that she's built to destroy. And that's such a destructive self. It's something she carries inside of herself for a long time. And I think by the end of the book, what she realizes is that can be a gift.
Yes, exactly. I love that. Thank you for that insight. Conway would like to know, did you speak with people who lived in a variety of communes and how they feel about it now? Great question. Great question, Conway. Miranda, give us the skinny.
Hi, Conway. It's nice to see you. Yes, I did. And I think this is a conversation that I've had a lot in my life because I've grown up around so many people who happen to have lived in communes. So I really did think about that. And I asked a lot of questions, but ultimately, what this story is about the human element, right? So anytime I tell a story, I was talking about this yesterday in an interview, I really try to be careful about not over researching, because I think that you can get mixed up in too much information and you can start to feel like you're writing, you're not writing a story, you're writing a set of ideologies, or you're spouting. So I thought, I did. And then essentially what I did is then, as I was writing the book, I completely avoided any stories about communes, especially novels about cults and communes. I really tried not to read any of them because I wanted this story to play out as a story of characters and not as a story of kind of like fitting a formula, because they're all people, So there are plenty of reasons that communes fall apart. And my hope is that this particular way that this commune falls apart is unique, even if it follows thematic similarities, I guess you'd say.
Very cool. Conway, thanks for the great question about communes. And Miranda, thank you for the insight. Conway is saying, yes, good point about not over researching. And I imagine as a research nerd and someone who has slightly OCD, I can see myself just going down that rabbit hole, just yum, 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 just eating devouring every detail. And it is hard to then restrain yourself from showing your research, as they say. And
it is
putting everything on the page.
Sometimes hours and hours and hours and hours of research only gives you one little tiny detail. And that detail is very important, but you could have probably been okay if you only did a tenth of the research to still get to that detail.
Oh, interesting balance. I love that. Miranda, Kirkus Reviews awarded this a starred review. Congratulations on that, because Kirkus, the praise don't come easy.
It's true.
Popping it up here just for a quick second, because it is, they say you deftly ratchet up the tension, avoiding the expected storyline. Talk about how you deftly ratcheted up the tension. How did you pull that off?
Well, I mean, the trick in writing a thriller is to keep back some of your cards, but also offer some of your cards, right? So it's like giving some breadcrumbs along the way and being sure that your reader feels that they're being fed a little bit as you're going along, right? You kind of are saying like, there's gonna be a big feast at the end of this, but here's some of this, eat this on the way. You're gonna be, I'm gonna take care of you. So one of my foibles as a writer when I have a first draft is that I kind of want to keep things back as long as I can. And then one of the gifts of an editorial reader or writer friend readers is that they say like, you've got to give us more earlier. You got to make sure that you, that you give us some. So I worked really hard in this book. And sometimes that can look like, honestly, like, having note cards down and really trying to kind of really think of it as like a symphony where you're turning up the volume here and you're turning it down here to figure out when those good spots are, to really say somebody's earned this. They need to know the answer to this. But then the trick then in those answers is to have them ask more questions, right? So you never give an answer that isn't going to complicate the reader's experience, right? You want to have them be sure that whatever answer you're giving makes them want more.
Ooh, whatever answer you're giving makes them want more. You're getting lots of thumbs up on Facebook. That is so insightful and so on point. I'm going to digest that in my brain and munch on that later, because that is really interesting. Brian is saying, ooh, this is a good question. Brian, thank you for asking what all of us writers are thinking. What do you do on the days when the words won't come? Brian, love your profile picture too. It's like a growling, adorable dog.
Well, the truth is, I haven't had this problem very recently because my problems have been much more about the fact that I have not had childcare for 16 months. And I have a lot of people in my life who need me. So when I sit down to write, it always feels like I'm drinking from a well. I'm incredibly thirsty, and I've been in the desert.
Glug.
I like, writing. It's so much easier than packing lunches and keeping 4-year-olds entertained and all that kind of stuff. So, but I also, in a more general way, I do really, and this is something I say a lot to my writer friends who call me in a panic when they can't, when they're having a hard time, is that you really have to let the fields lie fallow. You can't force yourself to write every minute. You have to give yourself a chance to have some off time. And sometimes I think you just have to listen. When your words aren't coming, there's a reason they're not coming. And it might be because, for me, a lot of writing doesn't look like actually writing. It looks like thinking. It looks like a puzzle, right? And it might happen when I'm washing the dishes or when I'm in the shower or when I'm driving somewhere. I can't always just sit down and produce. And in fact, I've discovered now that this is the 5th novel that I've published and the 7th novel that I've written. I've discovered that I actually do damage when I try to force something and I'm not ready to write it. It actually is much more work in the long run. So I trust that. And the gift of now having written 7 novels is that I know this is probably something that I just am going to continue doing. It's a much different, I'm at a different level in my career where I'm not scared about whether I can actually do it, which is a totally legitimate fear when you've only written 1 book, right? You think like, well, I did it once. Or if you've never written a book, I haven't done it. What if I can't, right? There's something really interesting that comes in mid-career where you suddenly go like, well, I have done it and I continue to do it. So the chances are high that I will do it again. And so in some ways, giving that gift to myself of saying like, it's not happening today, and the truth is that then like the job of the writer is, as Publishing Week always attests to, there's so much more that you have to do, right? Like
Yes,
I could always be doing, and just like dealing with my website, right? And writing something shorter that I can use, put up on Medium, or that I can pitch somewhere to try to support the project I'm working on, or participating within my own writing communities to support other writers. Like,
yes,
there are many, many things that you can be doing if you are in a moment when words are not coming to you. And those will also make your career stronger, because the irony of this job is that even though you're alone making up worlds by yourself, the only way your book has a place in the world is through community. right? Whatever that looks like.
Oh.
So building that community is, I think, a perfectly more than legitimate way to spend that time.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Thank you. George says, this sounds like an interesting read. I've always wanted to live in nature, but not in a commune. I found it interesting to delve into commune life and when it turns to cultists. Certainly how one person can have so much control and say things like, you are meant to destroy. Yeah, let's talk about the character of Abraham. And I'm just putting your quote down, George, because it is so meaty and delicious, but it's just covering your face a tiny bit. But thank you for all of that wonderful content you gave us. Let's talk about the character of Abraham. His position of power, because power dynamics is something that you really address in this book, of white male power over women. And let's talk about when communes turn to cultists and the character of Abraham abusing that power.
Yeah, so I knew from the beginning I did not want this to be about a cult where bad sexual things happen. That is not something I wanted to write about. And it certainly happens all the time in real life. And that is not my place to talk about because I have not experienced that in that context. So I really wanted to make it from the beginning that this was not someone who was going to rape anybody or sexually assault anyone. That does not mean that there are not sexually inappropriate things that happen in this book. But that's about his wielding of power in this community of women, and kind of him choosing to use his charisma and his power as a way to have power over all of these women in various degrees. My good writer friend Tova Mirvis, who is so smart and wonderful, she was talking about growing up as a young Orthodox person, and she had this idea. She kept talking about this as we were talking about the draft. She was saying, there are these charismatic rabbis in the communities that I grew up in who, of course, were never overtly talking about sexuality. And yet what they were using was the language and power of their own charisma to get young women to do what they wanted, right? And that's exactly what Abraham does in this book. He locks in, especially with Saskia, he elicits this loyalty from her, and this and that's super compelling to her. She wants to be, she's like standing there being like, please choose me, please. And there's this really amazing book that just came out called Cultish, The Language of Fanaticism by Amanda Montell, which is all about how it answers your question, George. It's all about how specifically language works in cults. And she also has a podcast, which was really fascinating. It called Sounds Like a Cult, in which basically she and her partner go through like Soul Cycle and The Bachelorette and aspects of our culture that we take for granted, and talk about the ways in which cultish language within those spaces creates unhealthy moments, right? They're not all cults, but they actually are quite pervasive in our culture. This idea of people, especially men in power, using a specific kind of set of languages or giving their followers a set of kind of tools by which they can unlock the secret to happiness. And that was a really fun thing to write, to think like, how does that happen? And as Abraham becomes more unhinged and becomes more afraid because of what's happening at Ruby Ridge and in Waco, Texas, he ratchets up that stranglehold on the community through his language.
Oh, and you do it so well. I just posted a link, an excerpt in the comments from the New York Journal book review, and they praise your beautiful prose. So the way that the way that you use words, the craft of the writing has also been noted and appreciated in your many reviews. So if anyone is interested, I just posted a bunch of them in the comments. Brian is saying, oh my gosh, his furry friend is named Smokey. Hi, Smokey. I'm like a passionate dog mom. So any little doggies, I just love. Rubidium would like to know, when you create your characters, I love this question. Do you envision them as people you already know? Do you cast the story in your head with stars, or do they remain gauzy? I love the word gauzy until the story takes over. Miranda, give us the skinny. Rubidium, great question.
Hi, Rubidium. That's my brother-in-law, and he's a filmmaker, so this is a very good question for him to ask.
Ooh, Rubidium.
So this is a fun question, Rubidium, because sometimes I do cast real actors in my life. For example, in my last book, June, there was a kind of an aging movie star in the present day, and I just wrote Carrie Fisher. I just imagined Carrie Fisher the entire time, and anytime that character spoke, I just had Carrie Fisher speak. And in fact, I had a photograph of Carrie Fisher giving the bird to the camera hanging over my desk. So it was like great access to like this person's fire. In the case of this book, I really didn't have a strong take on casting. But I did have to have a consistent idea between the young people and the older people, which was very challenging to imagine, especially people's bodies and how they change from the time they're 12 until they're in their 40s. So that was actually a real challenge. And I had to create, I actually had this way that I thought about each of the characters, which is that I gave each of them an animal or a plant that I believed that they were. So Issy, I was like, Issy is an oak, and she's always going to be an oak. So every time you write about her, you need to be sure to use language that you would use to describe an oak. This kind of a steadfastness, rootedness, tall, broad, very strong. Those are all characteristics that character has. Whereas Cornelia, another character, I was like, Cornelia is a squirrel, right? She's always kind of gathering up the things she thinks she needs and keeping them close, and she's nervous about everything, and she'll scatter away if something doesn't go right. And those little tiny tricks to myself were very helpful when I would go back and look at a scene, because I would say like, oh, Cornelia's not acting like a squirrel in the scene. I have to rewrite it so she makes sense, right? And that's not something that any reader would know, I hope. But it was very helpful.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Rubidium, thanks for the great question, Miranda. I love that. Thank you. Conway would like to know, how much of the plot do you work out at the beginning, and how much does it evolve as you write?
Oh, so this book I knew. So there's something that happens at the very beginning of this book that is important, but you don't quite know why all the way. And that's the key in many ways to who Saskia is. And you don't get that answer until the very, very end of the book. So I knew that from the beginning, and the details of that specific, what happens in that moment, in that part of the story, have changed, but the outcome is the same. So that held up the story. And then I knew as I wrote, I knew that in the past they would make this choice and they would do something bad. And so the circumstances of that choice and what they did remain pretty consistent throughout the book, throughout the writing of the book. What happens in the present day and how they react when they start to be blackmailed for what they did in the past, I was much more up in the air about. I knew I wanted to be about vengeance. I knew I wanted these characters to kind of get their comeuppance, but also to learn and be redeemed. But I didn't quite know the specific logistics of the last maybe 15 pages in which very specific things happen. And those are actually, I actually, in my last draft before we finalized it, something kind of different happened. And my editor, who I love, Christine Koprash at Flatiron Books, who I edited Bittersweet with, she advocated for something very different. And she was right. It was great.
Very cool. Welcome, Stephen. Welcome, Amy. Those are 15 packed pages too there. So thank you. I want to remind everyone to grab your copy of Fierce Little Thing today. The book is out today from Murder by the Book. I just put the link in the comments on whatever platform you're watching on. So click that link and grab this book, because you're going to be glad you did. I posted snippets of all of many, many fabulous reviews that Miranda has earned. Y'all, I want to thank you for joining us here today. Mystery and Thriller fam, you're the best. I love my people. We will be back at 4 p.m. With Brad Parks. You know, he's always a good time, so stay tuned. Miranda, thank you so much for being here. Congratulations on all of your amazing, amazing reviews.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations on this book. Oh, one more quick question from Annissa. Do your characters lead you or do you lead them?
Oh, they always lead me every time.
I love it. I love it. Annissa, thank you. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Miranda.
I wanted to say that I appreciate you all being here. And I also, I'm in the process of getting, why can't I come up with the name of it? Stickers that can go in your book. Help me out. What do we call those? Book plates.
Book plates.
Find book plates. Because this is such a weird time to be just all in our own little spaces. So my website is mirandabw.com. You can find my email there. Shoot me an email if you want one. I'd love to send one to you. So if you, I'd love for you to have one that you can pop in your book.
Oh, very cool. And Annissa says, thank you so much. This was great. Gayle say, thank you so much. Good luck, Miranda. Thank you all. Great to have you here. Miranda, thank you. And come back when your next book is out. We'd love to have you back.
Thank you, Sarah.
Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Bye.